The program. The Inspector General of Police David Kimayo and the Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku are tonight headed to Kapedo, a volatile border point between Turkana and Baringo counties. According to a survivor in the latest killings there, the emergency trip came after the killing of 21 administration police officers and 3 civilians there. According to the police spokesman Masood Mwenyi, however, 8 officers have been confirmed dead, while 12 are still missing.
A survivor of the attack has told the Standard team that the attack happened at Kasarani area along Kapedo Lokori Road in Turkana East constituency. The victims were ambushed as they tried to tow away a vehicle that had been burnt in last weekend's attack. The bandits surrounded the 23 AP officers and 3 civilians, spraying them with bullets until no one was left standing. When it appeared like they were all dead, the attackers then burnt down the lorry the victims had traveled in. The 2 p.m. Friday attack left everyone in the neighboring area so scared that no one ventured into Kasarani till about 4 p.m. this evening, when the 2 survivors were pulled out. The survivors say the bodies of the 24 people killed in the attack are still lying there. In the nearby Kapedo area, truckloads of security officers could be seen today as they waited for orders on how to proceed after the attack. The raid coincidentally happened as Pokot leaders led by West Pokot Senator Professor John Lonyangapuo and TRT MP Asman Kamama toured deserted Chesitet shopping center situated along Chemolingot Kapedo Road. The shopping center was allegedly set on fire on Tuesday after 3 GSU officers and 2 civilians were killed last weekend. The leaders claimed Turkana police reservists were used by government security forces to torch the center and have demanded for investigations.
Kama serikali wanakataa wasipewe bunduki hapa, watoe bunduki ya serikali kutoka Turkana yote pia iende. Kila mtu akae bila bunduki.
Kama mtu unatafuta bunduki, shikana na wazee, pata list kutoka kwa machiefs na wazee watakueleza huyu mkora iko hapa, huyu mkora iko hapa, huyu mkora iko hapa, tafuta huyo mkora. Lakini hapana ingia boma ya mtu ati unachukua ng'ombe yake ama mbuzi yake kwa nguvu. Hiyo ni sheria gani? Tell me that law.
And we would like the Department of Survey to come and either deny or confirm that issue, because a lot of these tensions is arising because of the fact that there's a boundary dispute.
As at this evening, the word on the ground was that high-ranking security officers and some area leaders were expected to go to the region to try and mitigate the conflict. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Right, so let's trace the genesis of the conflict that we've seen in Baringo County just in the month of October that has just ended there. So this started off on the 20th of October. You'll remember this was right at the start of the KCSE examination. A vehicle that was carrying KCSE papers, it was headed to a center in Turkana. I believe it was headed to Kapedo Mixed Secondary School. That vehicle was attacked and burned, forcing the Kenya National Examination Council to find an alternative route and indeed method of delivering those papers. Now, 5 days later, there was the report there of raiders overpowering police, and this happened in Sirata County, in Baringo County, where there was seen to be some tension. Now, what happened was raiders overpowered police. They drove away 30 head of cattle in that region, and indeed, in that particular attack in Sirata, 3 people were shot dead and are still nursing their injuries. Let's move forward a little bit to the 26th of October. GSU officer was killed and the vehicle burned. This was an ambush by cattle rustlers, and this took place in Kiserian, still in Baringo County. Now, on the 27th of October, of course, the president had by now heard of these attacks and was concerned. He condemned the attacks, and what you find interesting here is that it targeted security personnel in both Turkana and Baringo counties. Now, 2 days after the president condemned those attacks, on the 29th of October, there was yet another attack, a raid by cattle rustlers that took place in Bukoi in Samburu County. And as we showed you in the map before, all those counties surrounding Baringo indeed experiencing some violence in this region. And in this attack, 4 were killed and 1 was injured. Now, from the 29th of October, things started to happen. The Baringo County Speaker on Wednesday was headed to Turkey Kenyan, was arrested at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And on the 30th of October, he appeared before the court in Eldoret and was charged with incitement to the violence, along with other MCAs there. And by now, even the Inspector General of Police, Kimayo, was saying that the police were contemplating a shoot-to-kill order if they encountered any of the raiders or of the attackers. Now, from the 30th of October, and of course with that charge in court, we take you to today. But before we get there, I just want to remind you, on the 31st of November, that was yesterday, remember the President called the Cabinet to a grand national security workshop, and he indeed talked about these incidents in Baringo County, saying cattle rustling will be no excuse for attacks, and he said the full wrath of the law will be used for those attacks, for those attackers. All right, so fast forward to today. Now, this is what is feared to have happened. Over 20 persons are believed to have died, many of them police officers. Again, the police spokesman is saying about 8 are dead. They're still trying to get to the heart of the attacks. Remember, this is a region that is very volatile at this point. The Red Cross officials tried to go in, face some gunfire, and so, as we know tonight, the Inspector General and indeed the Cabinet Secretary for Interior are headed there to find out just what is going on in Baringo County. Now, that is what is happening, and we'll continue to keep our eye on this region and keep you updated on that. Now, still on chaos, but in a different region. That's at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, which has been closed indefinitely following student riots. Now, students went on the rampage after the university administration allegedly arbitrarily changed the school fees policy. Catherine Omanto has the details.
It started on Friday night, and the cat and mouse game between anti-riot police and students continued into the afternoon. By mid-morning, students had blocked a section of Thika Road, forcing the school administration to close the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology indefinitely. At about 10 this morning, students were given 1 hour to vacate the campus, while those living within the university compound were busy vacating their rooms. Those living outside the campus were not about to leave without a fight. And it would seem for good measure. Police found bang and illicit brew in some of the rooms outside the campus. Students went on the rampage after the university administration changed the fees policy.
Yes, the students were consulted but the process did not end well because the political season came up, and when the notice was put up, it was already the way it had gone to students was not sensitized well.
Same umelipa 60,000. Umetuma compulsory leave ukirudi, still hiyo 60,000 unafaa kulipa tena again. Haita auta account, unafaa kulipa new one. So that's the problem.
Nasema ni kuhusu leaders ndo walichocha.
Yeah, leaders, the outgoing leaders.
Students. What did they do?
Okay, before anything is signed, is established in a campus, huyo leader, either chairman or the secgen, anafaa kusign. So yeye alikuwa na sign, but the students are not involved. So
some students say the notice was too short and that the move would lock them out of the end of semester examinations. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Leaders put aside their political differences today at the burial ceremony for Met Governor Isaac Ruto's daughter, Emily Chepngetich Ruto. The Council of Governors, which Ruto chairs, was fully represented, as well as leaders from across the political divide. The National Executive was represented by Deputy President William Ruto. The Kenya women's cricket team, of which Emmy Ruto was captain, was also present. Emmy Ruto succumbed to acute leukemia, a type of blood cancer. The Deputy President who was there said the government will support efforts of setting up cancer centers in the county. This, as the Bomet governor pledged to set up a center in Bomet as a tribute to his daughter. As a sign of respect, her number 8 cricket jersey will be shelved. The leaders paid glowing tribute to Emmy Ruto.
Achieve and what she managed to achieve at this age in her cricket, in her academic, and in her career.
Looking at the life that she lived, there's a lot of inspiration that young people can learn in terms of growing their potential and that is what we'll miss as Kenyans and also as the Council of Governors.
Ile uamuzi mmefanya ya kwamba kwa heshima ya huyu mtoto wenu Amy, tutajenga a cancer treatment center hapa Bomet. Mimi nataka niseme pongezi. Tayari najua pesa milioni 8 mulikusanya kutoka marafiki. Mimi nataka nikueleze ya kwamba Mheshimiwa na Rais na mimi tutajaza iwe milioni 10 ndio ianze hiyo kazi kwa mapema.
Timu ya cricket hii natakana iende icheze kule South Africa December. Na ile ujumbe nimepata na kwamba wanalia hawana pesa ya kutosha. Kwa heshima ya Amy, hiyo pesa itoke mara moja kwa serikali.
Allow me only to now say thank you to all of you generally and assure you that we are condoled as a family. And as a tribute to her, I also want to thank you for welcoming all the visitors who have come today and for letting them say what they have to say with great respect.
May her soul rest in peace. Let's take you to a story that is already eliciting some feedback on social media. Now, for most new mothers, the birth of a baby is usually the best gift life can offer. Such mothers take time to bond with their newborn babies while relatives and friends share in the celebration. However, for certain women, the birth of their babies is usually the onset of terrible depression. They lose the will to live and attempt to kill themselves as well as their babies. Doctors say such women suffer from postpartum depression. They are unable to talk about their feelings because of the fear of being judged by society. Tonight, Linda Ogotu tells the story of two women who went through postpartum depression and lived to tell the tale.
You've just had this wonderful baby and everyone around you is ecstatic. Everyone there is except you. For you, life has come to a standstill. You suddenly do not want motherhood or your child, and you have this compelling feeling to end your life and that of your baby.
It's feeling that a woman we will call Mary knows too well. From the minute she had her daughter, she wanted her dead.
Daktari kaniambia na umnyonyeshe kwanza saa hii avute maziwa ya kwanza. Ambia usiwezi nyonyesha. Kuamka masaa zingine nikapata bado kako hapo. Kauliza daktari mliniletea katoto na nilisema sikataki. Wewe nilisemaje? Si smart anakaa monkey. Keusi sana mimi sikataki. Yenye ilinisumbua ni ati akivuta kwa nipo unasikia uchungu. Nikamwambia hata akona meno ananiuma. Simtaki.
She hoped that God in his mercy would find a way to kill the child and save her from her misery. And that hope came alive 2 days after she had what was supposed to be her bundle of joy. Her baby had difficulty in breathing. And even when the doctors took her baby, she hoped God would answer that prayer.
So hizo nilikuwa karibu hata kufurahia. Nikamwambia amekufa. Daktari akaniambia pana. Ngoja tunakuja. Kuja nikaona kako uhai nikasema kwa hivyo akako akanakufa.
The baby survived, and that only served to irritate her. She did everything and anything to make it clear that she wanted nothing to do with the child. Her husband noticed that his wife behaved differently from other mothers in the neighborhood. She would look for any excuse not to be near her daughter.
Hata ni babake tu mwenyewe aliniambia, ama unachukia mtoto juu ya ile uchungu ulisikia. Kama mimi sichukii mtoto, but yeye anaona kuna chuki.
Dr. Kanyanya of Kenyatta National Hospital says if Mary had gone through that experience for 2 to 3 days, she would have suffered from baby blues.
It usually occurs earlier than the postpartum depression. Earlier in the sense that it is like 2 to 5 days is when it occurs. And usually it is very transient. However, sometimes it is a precursor to postpartum depression.
Unfortunately, things did not change for Mary 2 months after she had had her baby. Kanyanya says Mary was suffering from postpartum depression, a kind of depression that new mothers go through but few dare to talk about.
It is a form of depression that occurs after delivery, usually within 2 weeks to around 8 weeks after delivery.
It can begin any time during the first 2 months after you give birth. Some of the symptoms to look out for include anxiety and worry, anger, crying, irritability, and exhaustion. These symptoms can occur anytime in the first year postpartum and may affect women who have suffered miscarriage. It may last several months or even a year. Lucky for Mary, she got medication and is now well.
If I wasn't on medicine...
Things did not go down that well for Janet. A tough pregnancy was the beginning of her nightmare. And the minute her son was born, she did not think she was worth raising him up. And the signs were all there.
So it reached a point where when he'd cry, I'd get really irritable.
Things went downhill from there and she tried to commit suicide twice. She says she had no plans to hurt her baby. All she wanted to do was to end her own life. But before she did that, she reminded each of her family members of just how much she loved them. Her doctor was to later tell her that these were the alert bells.
I kissed the babies, put them to sleep, you know, all that. Then I waited for him to sleep. So after that, I just remember waking up and there's all this empty cartons of medicine, and it was so horrible because I had to vomit. He was sitting on the bathing, what is it called? The basin. Yeah, the basin. And I just at that point decided to take bleach, and I took bleach and I blacked out, and he's in the water and there's no one else in the house.
It's an experience her husband remembers clearly.
You know, the first thing is shock. Then the next thing you wonder, who do you save? Do you save the boy or the mom? So it was quite a difficult scenario.
She had to be admitted in hospital. And so they looked for the fastest way to bring her brain back to a functional state.
And mostly it's because I felt I was not an adequate mom. And, you know, they take you through therapy, they take you through, all this type of things. But it didn't work. So finally, they decided, let's try ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, where they put a shock to your brain. It's like to reboot the brain, because I was really, really suicidal, really, really depressed. And there's no way I will come up to the outside world and be productive in that kind of state.
And while all that was happening, her husband took charge of the family. In his words, it drained him.
Nights became unbearable because at night she would really get sick. So I don't know why sometimes, in her condition, it hits badly at night. And then I didn't have the house help in the house, so I'd have to take care of both because my son was around 4 months old. In fact, I couldn't manage that. My sisters luckily called me and they were like, man, you cannot handle this as a human being. You cannot be working during the day and then spending the whole night awake, taking care of them. We know you love your family, but let's come in and help.
Janet is so much better now. She's learned to take care of her son and her family, even though they both admit it has not been easy. There is no particular cause of postpartum depression, but it has been associated with lack of family support for new mothers. Genetics also play a role, but the most predominant cause is the trauma of childbirth.
If you suffer trauma of some sort around the delivery, then most likely, you stand higher chances of developing postpartum depression. Then the family support system, the environment, the family setting, the way it is. If you have a lot of support, you are less likely to develop postpartum depression.
The symptoms and signs of postpartum depression are no different from the normal depression, but there is a red flag. The patient may experience suicidal thoughts and infanticide. For such patients, their thoughts center on disturbing and violent thoughts that may involve harming the baby somehow, such as stabbing the baby with knives, putting the baby in the oven, anything to end its life. For them, life is simply not worth living.
Usually their thinking is this way. that I have no future. There is nothing that I look forward to. And I don't want, when I'm not there, my baby to suffer. They mean well, if we may say so. They kill their baby and then they also kill themselves. The reason they kill the baby first is because they know they are also going to die. So they don't want to leave their baby to die.
He remembers a case he had to deal with recently. It involved a 25-year-old mother who had developed symptoms of postpartum depression within weeks after delivery.
She had been found trying to drop the young infant into a pit latrine.
By that time, she had psychotic symptoms and several beliefs that simply did not exist. She was put on medication and with time, she got better and went back home. However, she refused to take her medication a few weeks later.
Unfortunately, when she reached home, she traveled up country, and once she reached up country, she just committed suicide. It was very traumatic, but it shows the seriousness of this thing. It can actually mean, it can take away the life of the mother, the life of the baby.
Seeing a doctor immediately one notices the symptoms of depression can be the difference between life and death. Cultural beliefs in the society have over time made it difficult for such women to seek help or even talk about the experience with family members.
The family tries now to put their hands off of her, and they feel like their son may have married a mad woman.
The first stop should be a general doctor. Such doctors can diagnose the problem and if need be can refer such cases to psychiatrists. However, it is not and should not be a death sentence either for a new mother or a child. It is, however, important that one learns how to cope with postpartum depression. Be good to yourself. Make sure your own basic needs are met. Ask for support. Part of being a mother is knowing when to ask for help and to talk to someone about how you feel. Should you ever realize that you suffer from postpartum depression, these are the most important things to remember.
Postpartum depression is a medical condition that is treated by medicine. You are not the one to blame for suffering from postpartum depression. I appeal to your family members to understand what you are going through and to offer you all the support that they can give to you. Let them help you to get medical treatment. Let them stand by you, support you, and that support in itself is therapeutic. It will be helpful in the healing process.
Linda Ogutu, KTN.
A sad state of affairs, but what is good about Linda's piece at the end of it is that there is hope. The lady and her husband that you saw in that piece are with us tonight, and she will be telling us how she overcame postpartum depression as well as a psychiatrist. That is coming up later. I'm seeing lots of your feedback. We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to take you back to our top story tonight. We're talking about the violence and the killings that are taking place in Baringo County and its environs, particularly in Kapedo, which is a border between Baringo and Turkana counties. We told you that over 20 people are feared dead, but the police are so far confirming 8. This is a volatile region, but we just want to listen in to one of the survivors of the attack that took place yesterday.
Sasa vile walikuja watu wengi wakatusaraund, wakaanza kutupiga, wakaua watu wote. Tulikuwa tumekaa tu yani round, lakini sasa ni bahati ya Mungu tu yani. Kwa sababu kila mtu alipatikana, tulibaki tu watu wawili.
Usiku mzima ulikuwa unakaa namna gani?
Usiku mzima ilikuwa tu ni kujifanya tu umekufa, kwa sababu walikuwa wanakaa pale wakizunguka wakitaka kumalizia wale wamebaki.
Remember, the Inspector General of Police as well as the Cabinet Secretary for Interior are headed there. We'll continue to keep you updated on that. But coming up after the break, our discussion on postpartum depression. We'll be speaking to Janet Wanjiru, Walter Akolo, a couple who overcame postpartum depression, as well as Dr. Josephine Omondi, who's a consultant psychiatrist. On Twitter, Olemuga says, I have had the same experience with my wife. Well, Olemuga and all of you who are sending in your feedback, stay tuned to our discussion that's coming up right after this break. Welcome back to our discussion tonight. You've just seen the piece by Linda Ogutu on postpartum depression. Lots of feedback coming in. Emmanuel Ochago on Twitter, you say, may God protect my future wife from postpartum depression. Indeed. But today we're going to talk to the couple that you saw in Linda's story, and we have a consultant psychiatrist as well. So tweet me your questions at Yvonne Okwara at KTN Kenya. If you prefer SMS, 22155 will do. My guest tonight, Janet Wanjiru, whom you saw in that piece, together with her husband, Walter Akoko. We thank you both for coming in tonight. And Dr. Josephine Omondi, who's a consultant psychiatrist at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Daktari, we saw in that piece, Linda looked at, you know, the signs and the symptoms. Do we know the cause of postpartum depression, or indeed of any depression? And at what point does it move from, you know, having the blues? Because I imagine most mothers have that, you know, when you have the baby for the first time. But at what point does it now start to concern a professional such as yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, when a mother delivers, there's a lot of happiness that is expected. But in the first 1 week or so, they have what we call maternal blues. Now, maternal blues are normal. They are normal feelings of low, trying to recover. Remember, after delivery, there's a lot of disequilibrium, and therefore the body starts to recover. And in the process, there are those feelings of low, feeling irritable, but not to an extent of harming one or harming another person. But usually within 2 weeks, it clears. Okay. If it doesn't clear within that period, then you start worrying that there is much more than what you're seeing. We do not know the cause of postpartum depression, but in mental health, we look at it as any other form of, we call it major depression. And in major depression, this major depression just happens to occur after delivery.
Do many mothers know about this or go through this? What's the prevalence rate?
What I can say is that in every obstetric center or in every maternity, within a week, you will expect to get at least one mother who has some form of postpartum depression or psychosis.
Right. And psychosis is obviously
worse than the depression.
We'll get back to that in a moment. But we'd like to speak to Janet for just a moment. Janet, we saw you in that piece. Let's talk about this. This was interesting because for you, this was, you experienced this with your second child.
Yeah.
Not even the first. Tell us about that.
Okay, I already have major depressive disorder and paroxysmal anxiety disorder. So at least I knew a bit about depression and just what happens with it. My first pregnancy was smooth. I think it's a matter of the hormones and the transmitters in the brain. And I didn't even use medicine for about 1.5 years. However, the second pregnancy was quite tough for me. All through the pregnancy, I was on medication. And then when I gave birth, I was well for some time, for about 2 months, because I was still on medicine for my previous condition. However, there were several what do I want to say, situations that happened around that time that made me more sick. They made me more suicidal. And so we had already started seeing the alerts. And so with the baby, I'd take care of the baby, yes, but it wasn't as a fast pregnancy. That already was a trigger. Then I didn't have very good friends around me, you know, I didn't have very encouraging people around me, which is also an issue, because when you've given birth, it's a good thing, and you need to have people who are happy for you around you. I'd also gone back to work, so I thought that was quite stressful. And for me now, the suicide, I tried suicide.
Twice, we understand?
Twice during that period, which was about 4 months. And I attempted when I was taking care of the baby. So it wasn't more of hurting him, it's more of taking something that will hurt him. That's what I was thinking at the time.
So you were trying to remove yourself from that situation?
I wanted to remove myself from my family, thinking that in that state they will be better without me. So I attempted suicide twice. I got admitted where they tried all types of, remember now I already have the other condition. So this is an acute condition on a chronic one. It was horrible. It was so intense. So I went to hospital for about 2 weeks, which I was on suicide watch. They tried all types of medicine, all types of therapy, but none worked. So finally they decided that I go for a therapy called electroconvulsive therapy.
I'd like you to hold that thought right there, and we'll get back to that electroconvulsive therapy that you talk about. Walter, so first child, second child, your wife is in a state of depression, attempts suicide twice. What's it like for you?
I can say it was really overwhelming at that time, because as she has shared, our first child, our daughter, when she was pregnant with our daughter, she almost got well. The doctor put her off medication. For 1.5 years, she was off medication and she was really okay. So here comes a scenario where we have a second pregnancy, and now instead of now her being okay, it's now the other extreme. She was now extremely sick. So it was really overwhelming for me. Like as I said in the feature, the nights especially were really intense, because somehow she'd get more of maybe a lot of insomnia. She couldn't sleep. She was extremely irritable, especially at night. And she got a lot of, like she said, she got some psychosis. She would probably hear things or see things, hallucinations and all that. So it was one of the most difficult times in my life.
Let's talk about family for a minute, because they say to some extent depression, is something very personal and something you want to keep to yourself and you don't want to share with the family. What are you telling the family at this point, Walter? Do they know that this is what you're going through? And also, while you answer that, tell us about the suicide attempts, 2 of them. Where were you and how did you cope with that?
Okay. The first question is about family.
Family, yes.
The good thing is she's had the major depressive disorder and paroxysmal anxiety disorder for around 9 years. So she'd had it for a while before the postpartum depression kicked in. So most of the society already knew. I think we'd already been interviewed by a media station by then. So most people already knew that she has depression. But now people would not understand the postpartum depression. In fact, most people didn't understand how it came about, because she was supposed to be well. The situations were supposed to be much better. But, it just came in as a big surprise. So...
Okay. And the suicide attempts?
The suicide attempts...
About those,
one of them, I was in the room. I think it was at night. I was sleeping. She had told me a very nice goodbye, I love you. She kissed all the kids. And it was like she's going to the sitting room to watch a TV series or something. But the next thing I knew, I was hearing some funny choking sounds. So I rushed from the room and found her a lot of empty capsules, and she's on the seat, So I had to go to Google very fast and try to see what should I do in these situations. So I tried asking her what she'd taken. She told me she'd taken 30 pills. So I had to do a little first aid. Try to make her vomit. Try to give her some water. Talk to her. The good thing, it had not gone the medicine had not really gone into the body because it was like immediately. So when I called her doctor, she just told me, he told me to just let her rest and just be there more for her and support her at that time.
Right.
Yeah, the second one now was even more intense because this one was at a time she was washing the baby. So I was in the room doing my work. Like I've said, I'm a freelance writer, blogger, internet marketer. So I was doing my work on the laptop in the room. So she was washing the baby, and at some point I just had some silence. Then once again I had the choking sounds. So I left the room quickly to find her on the floor, foaming in the mouth. So apparently she had taken bleach. Yeah. So again, me and my Google, I went and Googled and was able to get some tell her to take some milk and support her again.
And also fortunately for you, because you knew of the pre-existing conditions and so you were already armed with some information.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back to you in a moment. Daktari, let's answer some questions that are coming in. Chebet Priska on Twitter says, does it have anything to do with self-esteem? Every time we hear depression, like I was telling you, depression always seems like something for those who are weak and those who cannot withstand the pressures of life. Could you just address that?
Yeah, let me say that self-esteem, low self-esteem is a part of the depression symptoms. Now, there are risk factors that when one gets, when one has the risk factors, then you need to be a little bit more cautious because they are likely to get the postpartum depression. One of them is being a young mother. Not necessarily first time, having a pre-existing mental health problem or even a chronic disease, not having a good social network, especially the support system, and having marital difficulties. Difficulties to an extent where there's a lot of violence, be it verbal or physical. And therefore those predisposes one to getting the postpartum depression.
All right. What are those major symptoms to look out for before it gets to the point and where either the mother is attempting or thinking of suicide, or indeed she's even thinking of infanticide, like we talked about in the piece?
Yeah, there are a few things that one needs to be on the lookout for. One is the interest of the mother towards the child. And this is usually acquired during what we call the maternal preparedness period. And that is all the 9 months. The 9 months. Then two, her own care. Care in terms of feeding, in terms of resting, in terms of making sure that her environment is clean and tidy. And also getting interest in other people, connecting with other people. If that is missing, then you start worrying that there is a problem.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the therapy that you talked about, Janet, because you said you tried everything and it failed. Could you tell us, a bit about that?
Okay, let me start by saying that for me, the postpartum depression was totally different from the major depressive disorder. I could tell this is something new. It was extremely, it was extremely painful as compared to what I was used to. So when I went in for therapy, I didn't understand myself completely. I was like, I've managed this for this long. What's happening? So I thank God I have a very, very good doctor. He's very involved and very, and he explained everything to me, that this is an acute condition, meaning that it's something new that has come. And yes, the symptoms may be the same, but they're displaying themselves differently. Like low self-esteem, I'm a singer and I'm a mental health advocate. So I sing and, people think my esteem is at the top.
Absolutely.
But at this time, it was so low, I could actually not perform. So I think the symptoms are quite quite extreme at the point you're feeling them.
Okay, all right. And so by this point you've tried everything.
Yes.
And then you go into some radical therapy.
Yeah. At the hospital I was put through CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy. I was put in front of, all the things I fear. I was put through a lot of therapies. But now ECT is what worked for me, and it's quite intense, and it's usually the last resort. So we did a lot of research on it. In the past, if you had told me I'm going to go for ECT, I'd have said no. Because, if you tell people who know about ECT, they have this very bad view of it, because it's shock on your brain. It looks like, you're dying. There's a seizure. It's really quite intense.
For you. Okay,
yeah.
Terry will explain that a little bit to us.
Yeah.
And indeed other therapies that can get people back to wellness. Here's a tweet from Miss Joanne. She says, "This guy is a hero, and I'm glad he stood by his lady throughout. It's his support that saved her." Talk to men watching now, and she's not the only one. There's a number of other men. Steve Guru saying that's a brave couple that's talking about it on television. Talk to the men about how to spot the signs, the support, because for men, I would imagine, you're thinking, oh, she's got this. She's a woman, she's a mother, and she can get through this. Talk to us about the support and how important you think it is.
Okay, I think it's a really difficult time for her. And the way you've asked how to spot it, it's a bit clear. You can really see something different in your wife. So for me, I would see that she's not interested in life anymore. She's not the bubbly, smiley person anymore. She doesn't want to go to work. She doesn't want to wake up. The insomnia got really bad. She already had it, but even now, some of the pills she was taking for sleep could not work. She'd still go 3 days in a row or something. So you can spot it by just when you're there with her, you can see some differences in how she's operating and how she's doing things, and also how she is when she's with the baby.
Right.
Yeah. So there are some who might not really want to stay with the baby, but she felt like she's not worth it to be with us, with the family, with the baby.
She's not a good enough wife or mother.
That's it. Yeah. So
I want you to address this very quickly, because we're concluding. Wango Salim on Twitter says, "Curse confusion, because I don't see the meaning of carrying your baby for 9 good months and then thinking of terminating it." Curse, confusion. Could you just address that very quickly, Walter?
Okay. Personally, I feel like that's stigma. That's what we faced. There are people who are like, no, you can't be going through this. You guys seem to be okay. You are so in love. There's nothing that should be taking you to this.
Yeah.
So personally, I would tell her, or the person who said that's not right. It's a condition. Okay. It's not something that she wants to hate the baby or hate the family, but it's a condition, just like malaria and any other, that needs treatment.
All right. Tari, just very quickly, talk to us about the therapies, because like we've seen with Janet, recovery is very possible. Just talk to us about how to get better, how to get onto that path.
Once you detect the symptoms of postpartum depression, it's important to alert the nearest doctor or the patient's doctor, and it's also important to seek for treatment. Now, there are several treatments. The first one is counseling. Counseling so that the person can understand herself and what is going on around her, and also the physiological changes that are expected after delivery. Now, 2, there is what we call challenging the thoughts that I'm not needed, I don't want my baby, I want to die. Challenge those thoughts. And this is what she was referring to as cognitive behavior therapy. The third one is medication. But remember, with medication, we also look at the life of this baby who is going to be breastfeeding, and there is excretion of some of that medication into the breast milk.
Right.
The fourth one is ECT. Now, depending on which school you went to, one would want to treat this mother as fast as possible so that you can get a quick recovery, so that she can be available for this young life. And therefore, ECT is actually one of the first indications for treatment, one indication for treatment, because it hastens the recovery, and therefore she can go back to her child and family. Medication tends to take a little bit longer, but again, once you look for more information, in the internet, and there's usually a lot of fear that, oh, this ECT is going to do this, is going to do that, medication. So sometimes you delay the intervention, and therefore that causes the delay of the recovery.
Okay, all right. Just very quickly as we close, Janet, how old is your baby now?
He's turning 2 next week. Okay. We're so excited about it. He's talking. I mean, we love baby language in the house. Everybody's talking baby language.
And you're well now?
Not well completely well. Since then, it's been quite extreme. Since ACT takes some of your memories away. So when you start remembering things, it can be quite instant, especially people you cared about who are treating you badly. Toxic people, toxic friendships and relationships, such. So I've had to go through a lot of healing, meeting them personally, talking to them. Some refuse, so you just have to go through it alone. But I'm on the path to healing, and my baby is okay.
That's important. Great. We thank you all for coming. Thanks for shedding light on an issue that we don't usually talk about, especially in this part of the world. In Africa, you should be a man, you should be a woman, take it with grace and pride. But we thank you both, and we congratulate you, and we celebrate with you, you and your family. Daktari, thank you so much for your insights tonight. We've been talking about postpartum depression, a couple that is so in love. It's good to have this on the show once in a while. So no matter how dark the subject, of course, what we're talking about is there is hope for recovery. Janet and Walter and, of course, Daktari have told us all about that. So keep your comments coming in. We will continue to sample them as we carry on with our discussion and, indeed, with this bulletin. Welcome back to KTN Weekend Prime. This is the point of news. A member of the KILIFI County Assembly, Kadenge Mwathethe, was this morning shot in the head and wounded by unknown attackers. Kadenge was attacked by 7 armed gangsters at about 1:15 a.m. this morning. They waylaid him as he approached his compound. The victim, who sustained gunshot wounds to the head and right arm, was rushed to Malindi District Hospital before being transferred to Mombasa Hospital's intensive care unit for specialized care. Kadenge is facing a petition challenging his election as a member of the County Assembly for Shela Ward.
Tumekuwa na mvutano wa kisiasa tangu general election. Kutoka hapo siasa bado hazijaisha kwa sababu mkoa na petition by election nini. Sasa tumerudi tena kwa by election baada ya kushinda petition nyingine.
Imekuwa ni hali hiyo hiyo ya kuvamiwa majumbani, manake hata huyo mfanyaji biashara na alivamiwa nyumbani vile vile. Kwa hivyo ni ombi kwa serikali kwamba usalama Malindi ama katika Kilifi County ichukuliwe umuhimu sana.
Sasa hii sisi hatuna tofauti na wale wabunge wa national, lakini utakuta sasa kuna masuala mengine ya usalama. Wabunge wa national wanapewa ulinzi, kila mtu anatembea na bodyguard, lakini sisi hakuna kitu, tunatembea tu tukitegemea Mungu, na hapo ndio sasa watu wanachukua hiyo advantage.
Okay, it's time for the sports news now, and as we promised you, a great feature on the state of boxing in the country. Of course, there's a lot that's happening around boxing. Remember 1988, but also Rumble in the Jungle is 40 years later. Well, that's what's happening in Africa, but obviously in Kenya it's a different story altogether, right, Lynn?
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's quite a shame that Kenya is not doing enough to actually help upcoming boxers, because we do have talent, but no one is looking that way, and everyone is concentrating on doing other things or on other sports. And as you say, the Rumble in the Jungle, it's quite another sad affair to know that Kinshasa has actually forgotten that, you know, yeah, it's really sad. I can't even wrap my head around that. But that story will be coming up shortly. Do stay with us. Well, it's time for KTN Sports, rather. I'm Lynn Washira. And while the final matches of the 2014 Kenyan Premier League seasons will produce this year's league winner. This is after Sofapaka earned maximum points in Mumias to delay Gor Mahia's title defense in Kisumu. Gor Mahia recorded a convincing 3-1 win against Muhoroni Youth at the Moi Stadium in Kisumu.
In Mumias, Sofapaka, who stopped Gor Mahia in Machakos last weekend, were not about to give up the fight. Enoch Agwanda was the star player for the visitors as he netted a brace. His third was in the 38th minute and the other in the 57th. Austin Ikena scored Leopards' only goal from the penalty spot. Joshua Kimboy, KTN Sports.
And to some athletics news now, Kathui Muia, a Form 4 candidate, beat an experienced field to emerge the 12-kilometer senior men's race during the first leg of the National Cross Country Series in Nairobi this morning. Elsewhere in Baringo, Cynthia Cherotich and Josephat Kiprop were crowned the 2014 ABC Bank Half Marathon champions.
The huge number of competitors during the first leg of the National Cross Country Series in Nairobi this morning could be attributed to the fact that World Cross Country Championships will be held next year. The senior men's 12 kilometers race attracted over 70 athletes who are a pure blend of experience and raw talent. 18-year-old Kathui Muia had to strike a balance between training and his secondary school examinations to beat more experienced athletes. He won in 32 minutes, 35 seconds ahead of John Elimlim and Franklin Ngelel.
Leo ilikuwa ngumu sana kwa sababu hii ndio ya kwanza kukimbia senior, nilikuwa nakimbia junior.
The World Junior 1500 meters bronze medalist Sheila Chemgetich showed no respect to her seniors in the senior women's 8 kilometers race. She cut the tape ahead of Miriam Wangoi and Nancy Nzisa.
I am preparing for World Cross next year.
Athletes in the junior races posted commendable results. Elsewhere in Baringo, Josephat Kiprop and Cynthia Cherotich Limo emerged winners of the 21 kilometers ABC Bank Baringo Half Marathon. The Karestchun Hill was the first hurdle for the runners, but the cold breeze provided relief as they took on the meandering Katimok Forest in Kabartonjo and drew to the finish line in Kabranet. Kiprop was timed in 1 hour, 1 minute and 3 seconds ahead of Ethiopian runners who failed to reach the podium. Nyahururu-based Cynthia Cherotich won the women's race in a time of 1 hour, 10 minutes and 6 seconds ahead of Joyce Chepkirui and Mercy Cherotich.
In basketball, Abo Kimondo's 15 points made the difference today as Barclays Bank outwitted their fierce rivals Upper Hill High School 55-43 to register a much-needed victory for the Bankers. The battle to take control of the second division match game seemed even as both sides went into the break on 22 points. Barclays capitalized on their opponents' errors, running them out 14-12 and 14-9 in the third and fourth quarters, respectively. Earlier on, Zitek University thrashed Kisumu Lakeside 78-57 with Jeremy Yogo starring for the Titans with 12 points. Charles Onyango made 16 for the Kisumu-based side. And well, tonight we're asking what is happening to boxing in the country, or should we ask what knocked out what was once the epitome of Kenyan sports in the 70s and 80s? There was a time when Kenyan boxers were ranked as the best in the continent. However, the good old days are gone and nostalgia has replaced the good stories that came from the social halls across the country. Moses Wahisi examines the issues bedeviling the sport in the country.
Once upon a time, a mention of boxing and Kenyan boxers came in mind, and opponents will shiver if they were paired against a Kenyan pugilist. Kenya dominated in the Commonwealth Games in 1982, 1990 and 1994. During that era, social halls including Pumwani Social Hall, Kariokor Social Hall, Mathare Depot Social Hall, and the famed Madison Square Garden in Nakuru crunched out top boxers who would later conquer the world. Today, just a few boxing rings in selected halls are active, underlining the death of the sport.
Siku hizi kwa vile boxing haina pesa, kila holi imekombolewa na watu wa kanisa. Inakombolewa the whole year. Mungu hakusema tuwe tunakaa kwa holi wale tulikuwa tukifanya sport. The sports inafanya vijana wanawacha mambo ya wizi. Ukiona boxer wa zamani vile yuko kama sasa mimi, watu wa mtaani hawezi wewe role model wao, lakini wakiona vile umechapa wanaona hii kama ni ndio boxing wache kale.
But according to John Kameta, the Amateur Boxing Association Kenyan president, the future of boxing is not at the social halls anymore.
We have already started a new way of doing boxing, field boxing. We are not going back to the social halls.
In the years of Kenyan boxing glory, the pugilists had their plates decorated by different corporate brands. That apart from offloading some of their bills, they also offered employment opportunities. Together with a well-structured league, the Kenyan boxers had no reason not to sparkle.
Wakati wangu tulikuwa tunajitolelea. Tulikuwa tunacheza kwa sababu ya sifa ya nchi yetu. Tulikuwa tuchezi kwa sababu ya tunachopata kutoka kwa boxing. Lakini boxing ya sasa wanaicheza kwa sababu ya pesa. Hizi ma corporates zimezirudia kama zamani. Tuko na Kimbo, Brewery, sponsor kama mimi kwa Posta, KPA, Railways. Hii inasaidia vizuri sana.
Maybe that's another reason that makes the current crop of Kenyan boxers feel neglected.
When I started boxing, it was a good career, but along the way, it's like for fitness.
There was a time when this gym at the heart of Pumwani was teeming with activity. Not anymore. And that does not mean that boxing talent died. There is simply no motivation.
Tukianza ilikuanga mzuri, lakini saa hizi boxing yetu imefifia sana. Hakuna masponsa, hakuna anything, yani tuko tu.
Tunacheza kirojua, hakuna kitu unapata baada ya kutrain, baada ya kucheza game, hakuna kitu bado unapata.
Even Kenyan star Rayton Okwiri, who kicked off his chase for the 2016 Rio Olympic ticket in a resounding style, knocking out top seed Austrian Marcos Nada in the preliminary welterweight bout in the AIBA competition last week, is a disappointed man.
At least tukienda kule tu feel pia tunasupportiwa kutoka nyumbani. Sisi tunaenda tu ni kama tumejipeleka sisi wenyewe. Tunawakilisha nchi at the same time, lakini hakuna mtu yote. Unapata pale kwa kona hakuna mtu anakusupport. Ni coach pekee anapiga tu kelele, na coach ni wawili peke yake.
I wrote over 28 letters. Even I wrote some letters to big hotels here. I don't know how people are marketing their establishments. I went to Kenya Tourism Board. I wrote to them. They have dodged me like I'm looking for money to take my kids to school.
Controversy off the ring gives others a platform to question the driving factor that places Kenyan boxers in competitions against opponents who enjoy wider exposure and experience.
Chukueni makoches ambao wanajua walicheza hizo vitu na wanajua vile boxing inavyotakikana.
The county governments have been accused of failing to do their part in respect of funding the sport.
Kila wakati tunasikia sport imepewa labda pesa kiasi fulani, lakini hatujaona ni pesa, yani hizo pesa zile hatujaiona.
Siku zile zimefika. Wadogo wetu hii madotcom ambao wanatufuata, watoto wetu ambao wanacheza ngumi wanatufuata, they will beat you.
Up to now, the president of a federation, a strong federation like boxing, I've never had a meeting with my minister. I've tried to book meetings. I don't know what we should do.
The real hit squad is remembered for the exhilarating performance of power punching, quick feet, stylish moves and hitting the target accurately. The former nationals, however, feels neglected and faults the current crop of boxing leadership.
Kuna mtu ashamwona Steven Lega na yuko Biafra, hawezi kutembea kwa sababu ya arthritis miguu. Kuna mtu ashamwona Philip Adionge na yuko Nakuru. Juzi nilimuita nikifikiri tumeitwa kwa mashujaa. Hakuna mashujaa wao. Waliitwa, wanaita watu wao, makazini wao ambao hata ngumi ukimwambia acheze, ataenda kuleta glove ambayo sio.
For a country that produced African first Olympic boxing gold medalist, it is a sad reality that Kenya has seen its fortunes topple for years now. Clubs like Madison Square, Nakuru, Pumwani and such like need to be revived and bring back the boxing steam that once existed. It is a fact that the standards of Kenyan boxing have gone down in the recent past. But one important thing that needs not to be taken for granted is that Kenya has talent that needs to be capped and nurtured. Moses Wahisi, KTN Sports.
Quite a sad affair in boxing, and that's how we wrap up tonight's edition of KTN Sports. I'm Lane Washira, but do remember today, Arsenal, Chelsea and Southampton won their respective English Premier League matches.
KTN Sport.
All right, welcome back. Now we want to tell you, or just rather to bring into perspective the discussion we had earlier regarding postpartum depression in the country. And what's the point of our discussion tonight? First off is that depression is treatable and manageable. It is a mental health condition, just like any other condition, like Walter said, right here on the show. And it is therefore something that you can seek help for and you can recover, as Janet Wanjuro did. Secondly is that the myths and stigma need to be eradicated from this. This is not a curse, neither is it sins from your past. I think Godfrey Simiu's tweet expresses this: depression is a mental disorder. The affected is not in control of their faculties. They should not be blamed. Jambi Mungai says postpartum depression is real. It is psychological, not demonic. We need to stop demonizing depressed mothers. They need help. So the myths and stigma is something we need to do away with. And the more we talk about it, the better we become at addressing the issue. And finally, more information is needed. Discussions such as the one we had today and many more are required to get the information out there so that you know the signs and symptoms to look out for. And of course, what methods of help you can seek, from medication to cognitive behavioral therapy, and most importantly to counseling and social support. That is the point. Okay, so I want to get into your feedback really quickly. At Lucy She Rocks on Twitter, you say, being a female is just but a title. Being a mother is a lifetime blessing. Rahab on our SMS line 22155, you say, I have experienced postpartum depression twice, I believe you said. It was hell. Mine was severe insomnia and suicidal. Thank God I'm well. Thanks to Dr. Makanyengo. We thank him as well. Sophie, watching us all the way in Mumias on our SMS line, you say, that man is a hero. Kudos to him. He deserves a pat on his shoulder. God will see him through. And indeed, we want to thank them for being so brave to talk about something so personal. And that was our discussion tonight. We thank you for your feedback on all our platforms tonight. Thanks for watching the Bulletin. This has been The Point of News. My name is Yvonne Okwara. We will see you tomorrow when The Inside Story and Jicho Pevu air tomorrow night. You don't want to miss that. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night and God bless.